The kitchen clock ticked louder than it should. Maria Rodriguez stared at the calendar hanging beside the refrigerator, her coffee growing cold in her trembling hands. October 15th, 2019. She picked up the red marker and drew a small X through the date. 1,247 days. 3 years, 4 months, and 12 days since her daughter Emma had spoken a single word. "Emma, honey, breakfast is ready," Maria called softly, though she already knew there would be no response. There never was. The 7-year-old appeared in the doorway, her dark hair tangled from sleep, her brown eyes that same distant, glassy stare that haunted Maria's dreams. Emma moved like a ghost through their small Boston apartment, present but not really there, trapped somewhere Maria couldn't reach no matter how hard she tried. Emma sat at the table and poked at her scrambled eggs with her fork, eating mechanically, staring at nothing. Maria forced a smile. "The community fair is today. Remember, I told you about it yesterday. There'll be face painting, cotton candy, maybe even a petting zoo." Nothing, not even a flicker of interest. Maria's smile crumbled. She turned away before Emma could see the tears. "How much longer can I do this?" The accident played in Maria's mind for the 1,000th time. Interstate 95. A drunk driver crossing the median at 2:00 a.m. Officer David Rodriguez's patrol car crumpled like paper. Emma had been in the backseat, coming home from her grandmother's house. David had been driving. The doctors said it was a miracle Emma survived with only minor injuries. A miracle. But they hadn't seen what Maria saw. They hadn't watched a bright, chattering, joyful little girl transform into a hollow shell. Emma's body survived, but something inside her had died alongside her father that night. Selective mutism, the therapists called it, trauma-induced. The human brain's way of shutting down when reality becomes too painful to process. Emma could speak physically. There was nothing wrong with her vocal cords. She simply wouldn't or couldn't. Even the specialists weren't sure which. "Your daughter may speak again someday," Dr. Patel had said during their last session, his voice gentle but his eyes betraying doubt. "Or she may not. We have to prepare for both possibilities." Both possibilities. Maria hated that phrase. It meant they'd given up. It meant hope was a luxury she couldn't afford anymore. She glanced at the framed photograph on the mantel, David in his police uniform, grinning broadly, his arm around Duke, his German Shepherd K9 partner. Duke had been more than a working dog. He'd been family. Emma used to throw tennis balls for hours in the backyard while David coached her. "Not too far, Mija. Duke's getting old." After David's death, Duke had been retired and rehomed. Maria had been too broken to take him, and Emma had been too traumatized to react when they said goodbye. The department found him a good home with another officer relocating to California. Sometimes Maria wondered if keeping Duke would have made a difference. But how could she have cared for a police dog when she could barely care for herself? "Come on, sweetheart," Maria said, clearing the breakfast dishes. "Let's get dressed. Fresh air will be good for us." Emma followed obediently upstairs, silent as always. The Boston Community Fair sprawled across 3 blocks of closed streets, bursting with color and noise. Vendor booths lined the sidewalks selling everything from homemade jewelry to kettle corn. A local band played classic rock on a small stage. Children squealed on carnival rides, their laughter sharp and bright. Maria held Emma's hand tightly, navigating through the crowd. Emma shuffled beside her, eyes downcast, immune to the festivity surrounding them. "Why did I think this would help?" Maria thought bitterly. Nothing helps. They passed a booth selling stuffed animals, a balloon artist, a woman demonstrating pottery wheels. Emma reacted to none of it. Maria felt the familiar weight of despair settling over her shoulders. This was pointless. Everything was pointless. Maybe she should just accept that her daughter was gone, that the Emma she'd known, bubbly, talkative, full of questions and laughter, was never coming back. "Let's get some lemonade," Maria suggested, her voice hollow. But Emma had stopped walking. Maria turned, tugging gently on her daughter's hand. Emma. The little girl stood frozen in the middle of the crowded street, staring at something in the distance. Her grip on Maria's hand had gone vice-tight. Her breathing had changed, shallow, rapid. Emma, what? Then Maria saw it. Across the street, maybe 30 yards away, a police booth. Several uniformed officers stood around talking with community members, but that wasn't what had captured Emma's attention. A German shepherd sat beside one of the officers, massive and alert, its dark coat gleaming in the October sunlight. A K9. Just like Duke. Emma's entire body trembled. Tears began streaming down her face, silent tears, because Emma never made a sound, not even when she cried. Oh, honey, Maria knelt beside her daughter, following her gaze. It's just a police dog, like Daddy's Duke, remember? Emma's lips moved, but no sound came out. She was trying to speak. Maria's heart clenched. Do you want to go see it? Maria asked carefully, afraid to hope. Emma nodded, once sharp and certain. It was the most emotion Maria had seen from her daughter in 3 years. Okay, Maria whispered, rising to her feet. Okay, baby, let's go. They moved through the crowd, Emma pulling forward now, her small hand dragging Maria toward the police booth, toward the dog that looked so much like the partner her father had loved, toward something Maria couldn't name, but desperately prayed might be a miracle. The German shepherd's ears perked up, turning toward them as they approached. And Emma kept walking, tears streaming, silent but determined. For the first time in 1,247 days, something had broken through the walls around her silence. Officer Jake Morrison had been working the K9 demonstration booth for 3 hours, and his face hurt from smiling. He loved his job, loved Thor, loved community outreach, but repeating the same speech about police dog training to hundreds of curious kids was starting to wear on him. Yes, Thor can smell drugs and explosives, he explained to a group of wide-eyed children for what felt like the 100th time. No, he doesn't bite unless I give him a command. Yes, you can pet him, but gently, okay. Thor sat perfectly still beside him, the picture of professional composure. The 5-year-old German shepherd had been Morrison's partner for 3 years, and they'd become an inseparable team. Thor had helped locate 2 missing children, found over 50 pounds of illegal narcotics, and once tracked a suspect through 4 miles of woods in the dark. But today his job was much simpler. Look handsome and let kids pet him. He's so big, a little boy squealed, running his hand over Thor's broad head. 85 pounds, Morrison confirmed, his hand resting on his duty belt. And every pound is muscle and dedication. Morrison glanced at his watch. Another hour and they could call it a day. His daughter's soccer game started at 4, and he'd promised Katie he'd be there. 9 years old, and she already had a wicked corner kick. Officer Morrison, his colleague, Officer Stevens, called from the other side of the booth. We're running low on stickers. I'm going to grab more from the truck. No problem. Morrison waved him off. The crowd around the booth had thinned momentarily, giving Morrison a chance to catch his breath. He reached down and scratched behind Thor's ears. You doing okay, buddy? Thor's tail wagged once, twice. Then stopped. The dog's entire demeanor changed in an instant. His ears shot forward, rigid and alert. His body tensed, muscles coiling beneath his dark coat. A low whine escaped his throat, a sound Morrison had only heard a handful of times, usually when Thor sensed something wrong. Thor, Morrison's hand instinctively went to his radio. What is it, boy? Thor wasn't looking at any potential threat. He was staring into the crowd, his focus absolute and unwavering. His tail had gone still. Another whine, louder this time, almost mournful. Morrison followed his partner's gaze, scanning the fairgoers. Families, teenagers, elderly couples, nothing out of the ordinary. "I don't see anything, bud. What's got you?" Then he saw her. A small girl, maybe 7 or 8, standing about 30 feet away. She wasn't moving, wasn't blinking, just staring at Thor with an intensity that made Morrison's chest tighten. Tears streamed down her face in silent rivers. A woman, her mother presumably, knelt beside her, speaking urgently, but the little girl didn't respond, didn't even seem to hear. Her eyes were locked on Thor like he was the only thing in the entire world. Something about the scene felt profoundly wrong. The child's stillness, her hollow expression despite the tears, the way she looked at Thor not with fear or excitement but with recognition, desperate, painful recognition. "Easy, Thor," Morrison murmured, though his partner hadn't moved. The dog remained frozen, staring back at the girl, whining softly. The woman stood, taking the girl's hand, and they began moving through the crowd, toward the booth, toward Thor. Morrison's training kicked in. He assessed the situation quickly. No immediate danger, but something was clearly wrong with this child. Trauma, maybe. PTSD. He'd seen it before in kids who'd witnessed violence, experienced abuse. The crowd around the booth had grown again, but Morrison barely noticed. His attention was fixed on the approaching pair. The mother looked exhausted, her eyes red-rimmed and puffy. She clutched her daughter's hand like a lifeline. The little girl never looked away from Thor. "Folks, give us some space, please," Morrison said, his voice carrying authority. The crowd shuffled back, sensing something serious was happening. Thor stood up, his tail low but wagging slightly. He took a tentative step forward, then looked back at Morrison, as if asking permission. "Stay," Morrison commanded gently. Thor obeyed but continued watching the girl approach. When they were 10 feet away, Morrison could see the child more clearly. Dark hair, brown eyes swimming with tears, tiny frame drowning in an oversized pink hoodie. But it was her expression that gutted him. She looked like someone who'd seen the end of the world and barely survived it. "Ma'am," Morrison said softly to the mother, "is everything all right?" The woman's voice cracked. She wanted to see your dog. Is that okay?" "Of course," Morrison said immediately. "What's your daughter's name?" Emma Rodriguez." Rodriguez. The name tickled something in Morrison's memory, but he couldn't place it. "Hi, Emma," Morrison said, kneeling down to the girl's level. "This is Thor. He's very friendly. Would you like to meet him?" Emma didn't respond, didn't even acknowledge that Morrison had spoken. Her eyes never left Thor. The dog whined again, louder now, his entire body trembling with some emotion Morrison couldn't identify. It was like Thor knew something, sensed something that Morrison couldn't see. "She hasn't," the mother started, then stopped, wiping her eyes. "She hasn't spoken in 3 years, not since her father died." Morrison's heart dropped into his stomach. "I'm so sorry." He was a police officer, Officer David Rodriguez. He had a K-9 partner that looked just like your dog. Suddenly it all clicked. Morrison's breath caught. David Rodriguez. He'd heard the story, officer killed in the line of duty 3 years ago, tragic accident with a drunk driver. He'd been at the funeral, standing in the back with dozens of other officers paying their respects. There'd been a little girl at the funeral. She hadn't made a sound, not even when they folded the flag. "Emma," Morrison whispered, looking at the silent child with new understanding. "Your daddy was Officer Rodriguez." Emma's lips trembled. She took a step forward, then another, her small hand reaching out toward Thor. The German shepherd pulled against his training, every muscle in his body straining to close the distance between himself and this broken little girl. "Thor, easy," Morrison commanded, but his voice was gentle. He loosened his grip on the leash. Emma stopped 3 feet from Thor. The entire fairground seemed to hold its breath. The crowd had gone completely silent, sensing they were witnessing something profound. Emma raised her trembling hand and pointed at Thor. Her lips parted, and Officer Jake Morrison's world changed forever. Time slowed to a crawl. Emma's hand remained extended, pointing at Thor with a finger that trembled like a leaf in the wind. Her mouth opened, closed, opened again. Her chest heaved with the effort of something, speech, breath, life itself, trying to force its way out after being locked away for 1,247 days. Maria held her breath, her hands clasped over her mouth, tears already streaming. She'd seen this before, Emma trying to speak, her lips forming words that never came, the failure that would send her daughter spiraling back into deeper silence. Please, Maria prayed to whatever God might be listening. Please let her speak, just once, just one word. Officer Morrison remained frozen in his crouch, his hand still on Thor's collar, his own heart pounding so loudly he could hear it in his ears. He'd been a cop for 12 years. He delivered death notifications, talked people off ledges, held dying victims in his arms. But nothing, absolutely nothing, had prepared him for the weight of this moment. Thor whined, a soft pleading sound that seemed to say, I'm here, it's okay. The crowd around the booth had grown without anyone noticing. 20 people, 30, 40. They pressed in closer, sensing something extraordinary was happening. Parents pulled out phones, recording without really knowing why. An elderly man removed his hat. A teenage girl wiped tears from her eyes, though she didn't know this child or understand the story. They just knew. Somehow they all knew. Emma's lips moved again. A small sound escaped, barely a whisper, more breath than voice. You can do it, sweetheart, Maria whispered from behind her daughter, her voice breaking. It's okay, it's safe. Emma's eyes never left Thor's. The German shepherd stared back with an intelligence that seemed almost human, his dark eyes locked onto the little girl's face as if willing her to find her voice. The fairground had gone eerily quiet. The band had stopped playing. Vendors had stopped calling. Even the carnival rides seemed to pause. The whole world held its breath. Emma's mouth opened wider. Her throat worked, muscles contracting, forcing sound upward from wherever she'd buried it 3 years ago. Her face contorted with effort, tears streaming faster now, her small body shaking with the sheer force of trying to speak. LLL. The sound was broken, rusty, like an engine that hadn't started in years. Take your time, baby, Maria sobbed. Take your time. LLL's like. Officer Morrison felt tears burning his own eyes. His grip on Thor's collar loosened completely. The dog took a small step forward, closing the distance between himself and Emma. And then it happened. Likes Daddy. 2 words. Barely more than a whisper. But they exploded across the fairground like thunder. Like Daddy. Emma screamed it this time, her voice raw and real and present. The words tore out of her with 3 years of grief, 3 years of silence, 3 years of pain that finally found its release. Like Daddy, like Daddy, like Daddy. She lunged forward, collapsing against Thor, her small arms wrapping around the dog's massive neck, her face buried in his fur. Her whole body shook with sobs, real sobs, with sound, with voice, with life. Maria crumpled to the ground, her hands covering her face as she wept. Great, heaving sobs of relief and joy and disbelief. The crowd erupted. People cheered, clapped, cried. Strangers embraced each other. A young officer standing nearby had to turn away, his shoulders shaking. An elderly woman crossed herself, whispering prayers of thanksgiving. Morrison fell back onto his heels, his hand pressed against his chest, trying to catch his breath. He was crying openly, unashamedly crying, as he watched this little girl cling to his partner like Thor was the only solid thing in a spinning world. Thor, for his part, remained perfectly still. He lowered his head, pressing his snout against Emma's shoulder, and made a soft, comforting sound deep in his chest. His tail wagged slowly, gently, as if he understood the fragility of this moment. Good boy, Emma whispered into his fur. Good boy, like Duke, like Daddy's Duke. Oh my God, Morrison breathed. Oh my God. Maria crawled forward on her knees, reaching for her daughter. Emma, Emma baby, you're talking. Emma turned her head, still clutching Thor, and looked at her mother with eyes that were finally truly present. Mama, he looks like Duke, like Daddy's good boy. Fresh sobs burst from Maria. She wrapped her arms around Emma, around Thor, holding them both as she cried 3 years' worth of tears. Morrison fumbled for his radio with shaking hands, but he didn't know what to say. What do you report? How do you put this into words? Officer Morrison to dispatch, I just witnessed a miracle. His sergeant, Lieutenant Williams, appeared at his side, his own eyes wet. Jake, what just happened? She spoke, Morrison managed, his voice hoarse. 3 years of silence and she spoke. Around them, the crowd continued to cheer and cry. Someone started recording video. A woman was on her phone, already calling local news. An EMT pushed through, asking if medical attention was needed, but Morrison waved him off. She's okay, Morrison said, watching Emma stroke Thor's fur while whispering a stream of words, simple words, broken words, but words nonetheless. She's more than okay, she's back. Emma looked up at Morrison, her face blotchy and wet with tears, but smiling, actually smiling. What's his name? Morrison's breath caught. She was talking to him, addressing him directly. Thor, he managed. His name is Thor. Like the superhero. Exactly like the superhero. Emma nodded seriously, then buried her face back in Thor's fur. Thor is a good boy, like Duke. Daddy loved Duke. Duke was Daddy's best friend. Maria looked up at Morrison, her face a mess of tears and wonder. Thank you, I don't even know. Ma'am, I didn't do anything. This was all Thor. And your daughter, she's incredibly brave. Can we stay? Emma asked suddenly, her voice small but clear. Can we stay with Thor? Morrison looked at his sergeant, who nodded immediately. As long as you want, Emma, Morrison said. As long as you want. Emma sat cross-legged on the ground, her hands buried deep in Thor's thick fur, her fingers working through his coat like she was searching for something precious hidden beneath. Thor lay beside her with unusual patience, his massive head resting on his paws, dark eyes watching the little girl with an attentiveness that went beyond training. Officer Morrison crouched nearby, giving them space but staying close. His radio crackled with chatter, other units asking for updates, dispatch requesting his status, but he ignored it all. Nothing else mattered right now. Maria knelt beside her daughter, her hand trembling as she reached out to stroke Emma's hair. She was afraid to touch her, afraid to break whatever spell had been cast, afraid this was all a dream and she'd wake up to another silent morning. Emma, Maria whispered, testing her daughter's name on her tongue like a prayer. Sweetheart, can you tell Mama what you're thinking? Emma didn't look up from Thor. Her voice came soft but steady, each word deliberate. He smells like Duke, not the same, but clothes like grass and car seats and, she paused, her small face scrunching with concentration. And beef jerky. Daddy always gave Duke beef jerky. Morrison's chest tightened. David Rodriguez had been known for carrying beef jerky in his patrol car, treating Duke between calls. It was the kind of detail only someone who'd lived with a K-9 officer would know. Thor loves beef jerky too, Morrison said gently. I keep some in my patrol car for him. Emma's head snapped up, her eyes meeting Morrison's for the first time with full awareness. You do. Every single day. It's his favorite reward. A smile ghosted across Emma's face, small, fleeting, but real. Duke did a special bark when Daddy got the jerky out, like this excited whine bark thing. She tried to imitate it, producing a sound somewhere between a cough and a yelp. Thor's ears perked up, and he made a similar sound, his tail thumping against the pavement. Emma's eyes went wide. He does it too, Mama, he does it too. Maria pressed her fingers against her lips, trying to hold back another wave of tears. 3 years. 3 years of silence, and now her daughter was talking about dog barks and beef jerky like it was the most natural thing in the world. "Emma," Morrison said carefully, "can you tell me about Duke, about your dad's partner?" The little girl's expression grew serious. She looked back down at Thor, her fingers resuming their gentle exploration of his coat. For a long moment, Morrison thought she'd retreated back into silence. But then she spoke. "Duke was the best dog in the whole world," Emma said quietly. "Daddy got him when I was really little, 3, I think. Duke was already trained and everything, but Daddy said Duke needed to learn about me too. So Duke came to live with us, and he slept in this big crate in Daddy's room, but sometimes—" She paused, smiling at the memory. "Sometimes I'd sneak in there at night and sleep next to the crate, and Duke would stick his nose through the bars and I'd hold it like a hand." Maria gasped softly. She'd forgotten about that. Emma used to disappear from her bed almost every night, and they'd find her curled up next to Duke's crate, the two of them pressed as close as the bars would allow. "Daddy would take me on ride-alongs sometimes," Emma continued, her voice gaining strength. "Not real ones, just like practicing. We'd sit in the patrol car in the driveway, and Daddy would show me all the buttons and the computer and the radio. And Duke would sit in his special section in the back, and Daddy would say, 'Emma, this is Duke's office. He's working, so we have to be professional.'" She giggled, an actual giggle, and the sound was so unexpected, so beautiful, that Morrison had to look away to compose himself. "But Duke wasn't always working," Emma went on. "When Daddy came home and took off his uniform, Duke would go crazy, like so happy. He'd bring Daddy his toys and we'd all play in the backyard. Daddy taught me how to throw a tennis ball really far, and Duke would chase it and bring it back, every single time. He never got tired." Lieutenant Williams had appeared at the edge of the gathering crowd, his arms crossed, his weathered face suspiciously wet. Several other officers had joined him, all listening in silence to this 7-year-old girl finally tell her story. "What happened to Duke?" Morrison asked gently. "After your dad?" Emma's hand stilled in Thor's fur. Her voice dropped to barely a whisper. "After the accident, after Daddy didn't come home. Duke stayed with us for a little while, but he was sad. Really, really sad. He'd sit by the front door all day, waiting. He wouldn't eat. Mama cried all the time, and I couldn't." Her voice cracked. Thor shifted, pressing his head more firmly against her leg, offering comfort the only way he knew how. "I couldn't talk anymore," Emma finished, tears spilling again. "I tried. I wanted to tell Duke that Daddy wasn't coming back, but the words wouldn't come out. They were stuck. Everything was stuck inside me, and I couldn't get it out." Maria pulled Emma close, holding her tight. "Oh, baby. Oh, my sweet girl." "The police found Duke a new home," Emma continued, her voice muffled against her mother's shoulder, "with another officer who was moving to California. They said it would be good for him. They said he needed a fresh start, but I never got to say goodbye. I wanted to, but I couldn't talk, and then he was just gone." Morrison felt like someone had punched him in the gut. This little girl had lost her father and her father's partner in one devastating blow, and the trauma had literally stolen her voice. "Emma," Morrison said, his voice rough with emotion, "Duke didn't forget you. Dogs don't forget. And I promise you, wherever he is, he remembers you and your dad. He remembers all those nights you slept by his crate. He remembers the tennis balls in the backyard and the beef jerky. Dogs' memories work differently than ours. They remember feelings more than events. And Duke, he felt loved every single day with you and your father." Emma lifted her head, looking at Morrison with red-rimmed eyes. "You really think so?" "I know so. I've worked with K9s for years. Thor here," he gestured to his partner. "He'd remember you forever if we spent even 1 week together." Emma looked down at Thor, and something shifted in her expression. Determination replaced the sadness. "Can I see him again?" she asked. "Thor, I mean, can I come back and see him?" Morrison glanced at Lieutenant Williams, who nodded immediately. "Emma," Morrison said, "how about Thor and I visit you? Would you like that?" The smile that broke across Emma's face was like sunrise after the longest night. Really? Really? We'll come visit you, and maybe we can help you talk to Duke too. But he's in California. Morrison smiled. Emma, you just did something impossible. You spoke after 3 years of silence. Finding a way to talk to Duke, that'll be easy. By Monday morning, Emma Rodriguez's story had exploded across the internet. Maria sat at her kitchen table, scrolling through her phone with trembling hands. The video someone had captured at the fair, Emma pointing at Thor, those 2 precious words breaking free, had been shared over 3 million times. News outlets from Boston to Los Angeles were calling, requesting interviews. Good Morning America wanted them on the show. Even People magazine had reached out. "Mama, there's a van outside," Emma called from the living room window, her voice still soft but present. Maria had spent the entire weekend just listening to her daughter talk, about breakfast, about her dolls, about the neighbor's cat, drinking in every word like water after a drought. Maria peered through the curtains. A local news van was indeed parked across the street, a reporter and cameraman setting up on the sidewalk. "We're not talking to them," Maria said firmly, pulling the curtains closed. "Not yet, maybe not ever." Her phone buzzed. Another text from Officer Morrison. "How's Emma doing this morning? Thor wants to know." Maria smiled despite her exhaustion. Morrison had texted 3 times since Saturday, checking in, making sure Emma was okay. He'd sent photos of Thor. He'd even sent a video of Thor doing tricks, which had made Emma laugh. An actual, genuine laugh that Maria had recorded and replayed a dozen times. "She's good, talking more, asking about Duke." The response came immediately. "I've been thinking about that. Can I stop by around 2? I have some information." Maria's heart skipped. What kind of information? "The kind best shared in person, trust me." At exactly 2:00 p.m., Morrison's patrol car pulled into the driveway. Emma was at the door before he'd even cut the engine, her face pressed against the glass. "It's Thor, Mama, it's Thor." Maria opened the door, and Morrison walked up the path with Thor on a lead. The German shepherd's tail wagged the moment he spotted Emma. "Officer Morrison," Maria greeted him. "You really didn't have to." "Jake," he interrupted with a smile. "Please call me Jake. And yes, I did have to. Thor's been mopping around the station all weekend, missing his new friend." Emma dropped to her knees as Thor approached, and the dog immediately pressed his head against her chest. She wrapped her arms around him, murmuring soft greetings that made Maria's eyes water for the 100th time that weekend. "Can we talk inside?" Morrison asked Maria quietly. "I spent yesterday making some phone calls." They settled in the living room, Emma on the floor with Thor, Morrison and Maria on the couch. Morrison pulled out a small notebook, flipping through pages covered in his cramped handwriting. "I tracked down Duke," he said without preamble. Maria's breath caught, Emma's head snapped up. "You found him?" "I found him," Morrison confirmed. "He's living in San Diego with Officer Marcus Chen. Chen was one of the officers who volunteered to take Duke after your father passed. He's been caring for Duke for 3 years now." "Is Duke okay?" Emma asked, her voice small and worried. "Is he happy?" Morrison's expression softened. "I talked to Officer Chen for over an hour yesterday. Emma, Duke is doing well. He's 9 years old now, retired from active duty. Chen says he slowed down quite a bit, arthritis in his hips, going gray around the muzzle, but he's healthy. He spends his days lounging in Chen's backyard, playing with Chen's 2 kids and getting spoiled rotten." Tears streamed down Emma's face, but she was smiling. "He has kids to play with. 2 of them, ages 6 and 8. Chen says Duke appointed himself their guardian, follows them everywhere, sleeps outside their bedroom door at night." Maria pressed her hand against her mouth. Duke had done the same thing with Emma when she was little. "I told Chen about what happened at the fair," Morrison continued. "About Emma speaking for the first time in 3 years because of Thor, and Emma, Officer Chen cried. He said he's never forgotten your father, that taking care of Duke has been an honor, and he wants to help. Help how? Maria asked. Morrison pulled out his phone, opening an app. Chen set up a video call for Wednesday evening. If Emma wants to, she can see Duke, talk to him. He might not understand the words, but dogs recognize voices, especially voices they loved. Emma stared at Morrison like he just offered her the moon. I can see Duke, really see him. Really see him. And Chen's wife had an idea. She's been recording Duke, just little videos of his daily routine, playing in the yard, eating breakfast, napping in the sun. She compiled them into a montage and wants to send it to you, so you can see how Duke's been living these past 3 years. Maria couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. This stranger, this officer who owed them nothing, had spent his entire Sunday tracking down her late husband's K9 partner. Why, Maria finally managed, why would you do all this? Morrison looked at Emma, who was clutching Thor like a lifeline, tears and joy mixing on her small face. Because 3 years ago, I stood in the back row at David Rodriguez's funeral, Morrison said quietly. I watched the honor guard fold the flag. I saw Duke howling beside the casket, that horrible, heartbroken sound that K9s make when they lose their handler. And I saw a little girl who couldn't even cry because the grief had swallowed her whole. He turned to Maria. I've carried that image with me for 3 years. That little girl's silence haunted me. When I saw Emma at the fair, when I realized who she was, when I watched her speak for the first time. His voice cracked. I realized I could actually do something. I could help give her back a piece of what she lost. Emma stood up and walked over to Morrison. Without warning, she climbed onto the couch and hugged him, a fierce, tight hug that spoke of gratitude beyond words. Morrison hugged her back, his eyes squeezed shut. Thank you, Emma whispered into his shoulder. Thank you for finding Duke. You're welcome, sweetheart, Morrison said, his voice thick. You're so welcome. Thor jumped onto the couch, completely breaking protocol, and wedged himself between Emma and Morrison, tail wagging furiously, as if to say group hug. I want in on the group hug. And for the first time in 3 years, Emma Rodriguez laughed, really, truly laughed, until her sides hurt and her cheeks ached and her mother cried happy tears on the other side of the couch. Outside, the news van waited. But inside this small living room, something far more important than a news story was happening. A family was beginning to heal. Wednesday evening arrived with the weight of Christmas morning and the anxiety of a first day of school all mixed together. Emma had barely eaten all day, too nervous and excited to focus on anything except the approaching 7:00 p.m. video call. Mama, what if he doesn't remember me? Emma asked for the 10th time, packing the living room in her favorite purple dress, the one she'd worn to the police station when she was 4 to surprise her father at work. Maria knelt down, taking her daughter's hands. Emma, sweetheart, dogs never forget, especially dogs who loved someone as much as Duke loved you. But it's been 3 years, and I'm bigger now, and my voice, he's never heard my voice like this. I was always talking before, and then I wasn't, and now. Hey, Maria said firmly, tilting Emma's chin up. Duke knew you before you could talk at all. He knew you when you were a baby. He'll know you now. Officer Morrison had set everything up on his laptop, connecting with Officer Chen in San Diego through a secure video platform. He'd arrived an hour early, wanting to make sure the technology worked perfectly. Thor lay at Emma's feet, sensing her anxiety, occasionally pressing his nose against her leg. 5 minutes, Morrison announced, checking his watch. Emma, do you want to practice what you're going to say? Emma shook her head. I'll know when I see him. At exactly 7:00 p.m., Morrison clicked the call button. The screen flickered, then resolved into a bright California backyard. A man in his late 30s appeared, Asian American, warm smile, wearing a faded SDPD t-shirt. Officer Marcus Chen. Hello, Boston, Chen's voice came through clearly. "You must be Emma." Emma nodded, suddenly shy, her earlier excitement transforming into nervousness. "Emma, I've heard so much about you. Your dad, Officer Rodriguez, was a legend in the K-9 community. The way he worked with Duke, the bond they had, everyone knew about it." "You knew my daddy?" Emma asked softly. "I met him twice at K-9 conferences. He was an incredible handler and, from what everyone said, an even better father." Chen's smile was genuine sad. "I'm so sorry for your loss." "Thank you for taking care of Duke," Emma whispered. Chen's eyes got misty. "It's been my honor, truly. That dog, he's something special. Are you ready to see him?" Emma nodded, scooting closer to the screen. Maria positioned herself behind her daughter, hands on Emma's shoulders. Morrison and Thor remained nearby, silent support. Chen tilted the camera down and called out, "Duke, come here, boy, someone wants to see you." For a moment, nothing happened. Then a gray-muzzled German shepherd appeared in the frame, moving slower than Emma remembered, his gait slightly stiff. But his eyes, those intelligent, soulful brown eyes, were exactly the same. "Duke," Emma breathed. The dog's ears shot up. His entire body went rigid. "Duke, it's me, it's Emma." Duke's head tilted, his ears swiveling forward. He took a step closer to Chen's phone, sniffing at the screen, making a confused whining sound. "He hears you," Chen said quietly. "Watch his reaction." "Duke, remember me? I used to sleep by your crate. We played ball in the backyard. You were Daddy's best friend." Emma's voice cracked. "I'm sorry I never said goodbye. I couldn't talk. The words were stuck, but I can talk now, Duke. I can talk because of Thor." She gestured to the German shepherd beside her. "Thor looks like you. He helped me remember." Duke was fully alert now, packing in front of the camera, whining continuously. His tail wagged in short, uncertain bursts. "He recognizes something," Chen said, his own voice thick with emotion. "I've never seen him act like this." "I miss you," Emma continued, tears streaming freely. "I miss you so much. I miss Daddy. I miss when we were all together. But Mama says you're happy now, and that makes me happy too. You have new kids to protect, and that's good. That's so good." Duke barked, a sharp, urgent sound, and pawed at the phone screen. "Easy, buddy," Chen soothed, but his hand was shaking as he held the phone steady. Emma pressed her hand against the laptop screen as if she could reach through and touch him. "You're such a good boy, Duke. The best boy. Daddy loved you so much. He told me every single day how lucky he was to have you as his partner." Duke sat, trembling, his eyes locked on the screen. Then he did something that made everyone watching break down completely. He raised his right paw, the same gesture he'd been trained to do for David Rodriguez, their special greeting, their private bond. "Oh my God," Maria sobbed. He remembers David's command." Emma's face crumpled. "I remember that. Daddy would say shake, and Duke would give his paw, and Daddy would hold it and say partners forever." "Duke still does it," Chen said, his voice breaking. "Every night before bed, he sits by the front door, raises his paw, waiting. I never knew what it meant until now." Morrison had to turn away, his shoulders shaking. Even Thor seemed affected, pressing closer to Emma, offering silent comfort. Emma wiped her eyes, trying to smile through her tears. "Duke, you can put your paw down now. It's okay. Daddy's not coming back, but we're all okay. I'm okay. Mama's okay. And you're okay. We're all going to be okay." Duke lowered his paw slowly, then lay down in front of the camera, his head on his paws, his eyes never leaving the screen. For the next hour, Emma talked. She told Duke about school, about her friends, about the fair and meeting Thor. She told him about the 3 years of silence, about the grief that had swallowed her, about finding her voice again. And Duke listened to every word, his ears tracking her voice, his eyes watching the screen like it held the most important thing in the world. Because to him it did. When the call finally ended, Emma sat back, exhausted but peaceful. "Mama," she said softly. "Yes, baby." "I think Daddy would be happy about Duke, about Thor, about everything." Maria pulled her close. "I think so too, sweetheart. I think so too." 2 weeks after the video call with Duke, Officer Jake Morrison sat in Lieutenant Williams' office at the Boston Police Department's K-9 unit headquarters, his proposal printed and stapled, sitting between them on the desk like a bridge or a bomb. He wasn't sure which. "You want to do what?" Williams asked, leaning back in his chair, his gray eyebrows raised nearly to his hairline. "I want to establish a pilot program," Morrison repeated, his voice steady despite his racing heart. "Using K-9 units for trauma response and therapy, specifically for families of fallen officers and crime victims, starting with Emma Rodriguez." Williams picked up the proposal, flipping through the pages. "Jake, our dogs are trained for narcotics detection, suspect apprehension, search and rescue, not therapy." "Thor wasn't trained for therapy either," Morrison countered. "But he reached a traumatized child when 3 years of professional therapy couldn't. Sir, you saw what happened at that fair. Everyone saw it. That video has 12 million views now. People are calling from across the country, asking if we offer this kind of service." "Which we don't." "Which we could." Morrison leaned forward. "Look, I've done the research. There are therapy dog programs, sure, but they're usually golden retrievers or labs, dogs specifically bred for gentle temperaments. Nobody's really exploring what police K-9s could do in therapeutic settings. These dogs are intelligent, highly trained, and many of them have the right temperament for it." Williams set down the proposal. "And you want to use Thor?" "I want to use Thor with Emma, yes. 1 afternoon a week. Supervised, documented. If it works, if we see continued positive results, we could expand the program, partner with the department's Victim Services Division, maybe even get grant funding." "Jake, you have a full-time job. Thor has a full-time job. When exactly would you fit this in?" "Wednesday afternoons. Emma gets out of school at 2:30. I could use my community outreach hours. Thor and I could work with her for 90 minutes each week. The department's already paying me to build community relations. This would be the most meaningful community relation work I've ever done." Williams was quiet for a long moment, studying Morrison's face. "This isn't just about the program, is it? This is personal for you." Morrison didn't look away. "Yes, sir. It's personal. I can't stop thinking about that little girl who stood silent at her father's funeral. David Rodriguez was one of ours. His daughter deserves every resource we have. And if it doesn't work, if she regresses, then we'll have tried. But Lieutenant, she's been talking nonstop for 2 weeks. Her therapist, Dr. Patel, called me yesterday. He said Emma's made more progress in 14 days than she made in 3 years. He's writing a letter of support for the program." Williams picked up the proposal again, reading more carefully this time. Morrison waited, barely breathing. Finally, Williams looked up. "Conditional approval, 3 months carefully monitored. You document everything: Emma's progress, Thor's behavior, time invested, outcomes achieved. Dr. Patel supervises from a therapeutic standpoint, and Jake," his expression softened, "this is good work you're doing. David would be proud." Morrison's throat tightened. "Thank you, sir." The following Wednesday, Morrison pulled up to Emma's elementary school at 2:45 p.m. Thor sat in his compartment in the back of the patrol car, alert and eager. Morrison had explained the new routine to his partner that morning, though he wasn't sure how much Thor actually understood versus simply sensing Morrison's excitement. Emma burst through the school doors the moment she spotted the patrol car, her backpack bouncing against her shoulders. Her teacher, Mrs. Chen, followed at a more measured pace, smiling and waving. "Officer Morrison, Thor." Emma ran to the car, stopping just short of throwing herself at the vehicle. She'd learned proper protocol around working dogs over the past 2 weeks. Morrison opened Thor's compartment, and the German Shepherd bounded out, tail wagging furiously. Emma dropped to her knees, and Thor immediately pressed against her, accepting her hug with patient dignity. "How was school?" Morrison asked. "I gave a presentation about K9 units," Emma announced proudly. "Mrs. Chen let me talk about Daddy and Duke and Thor and everything. I got an A+. "That's fantastic, Emma. Can we go to the park, please? I want to practice the commands you taught me." Morrison had been teaching Emma basic K9 handling commands: sit, stay, heel. Nothing that would interfere with Thor's actual police work, but enough to give Emma a sense of connection and control. Dr. Patel had suggested it, nodding that trauma victims often needed to rebuild their sense of agency in the world. They drove to a quiet park on the edge of town, one that Morrison had scouted in advance. Secluded enough for privacy, but open enough to feel safe. Emma talked the entire drive, about school, about a girl named Sarah who'd become her friend, about a book she was reading about police dogs throughout history. Morrison listened, marveling at the transformation. This chatty, animated child bore little resemblance to the silent, hollow-eyed girl from the fair. At the park, they ran through exercises. Emma would give Thor commands, and the dog would obey, though Morrison suspected Thor was humoring the little girl more than actually following her authority. But it didn't matter. What mattered was Emma's confidence growing with each successful command, her laughter when Thor deliberately exaggerated his responses to make her giggle. "Officer Morrison," Emma asked during a water break, both she and Thor panting from their exercises. "Yes. Do you think I could help other kids? Kids who can't talk. I could tell them about Thor and Duke. I could tell them it gets better." Morrison's heart swelled. Here was this 7-year-old who'd spent 3 years locked in traumatic silence, and her first instinct upon healing was to help others. "Emma, I think that's a wonderful idea. When you're ready, when Dr. Patel says you're ready, we could definitely explore that." Emma hugged Thor tightly. "Daddy always said Duke helped people feel safe, even when they were scared. I think Thor does that too." "Your daddy was right. That's what good police dogs do." "And good police officers," Emma added, looking at Morrison with such trust and gratitude that he had to blink back tears. "Yeah," Morrison managed, "good police officers too." As they packed up to leave, Morrison pulled out his phone and photographed Emma and Thor sitting together in the fading sunlight, her arm around his neck, both of them looking at the camera, both of them content. This photo would become the cornerstone of his presentation to the city council, the image that would launch a program helping dozens of trauma survivors over the coming years. But in that moment, it was simply a reminder that sometimes healing comes with 4 paws, a wagging tail, and an officer willing to go above and beyond. 6 months had passed since that October afternoon at the community fair. Spring had arrived in Boston, bringing with it cherry blossoms, warming temperatures, and a transformation no one could have predicted. Emma Rodriguez stood in front of her bedroom mirror, adjusting the collar of her navy blue dress. Pinned to her chest was her father's memorial badge, a replica the police department had made for her, bearing Officer David Rodriguez's badge number, 2847. "You look beautiful, Mija," Maria said from the doorway, her voice thick with emotion. "I'm nervous," Emma admitted, touching the badge gently. "What if I mess up my speech?" "You won't, and even if you do, everyone there already loves you." Today was the official launch ceremony for the Officer Rodriguez K9 Therapy Initiative, a program that had grown far beyond anyone's expectations. What had started as weekly park visits with Thor had evolved into something extraordinary. The pilot program's results had been undeniable. Emma's progress, meticulously documented by Dr. Patel and Officer Morrison, showed remarkable improvement in verbal communication, emotional regulation, and trauma processing. Her story had inspired the Boston Police Department to partner with Massachusetts General Hospital's psychiatric unit, the mayor's office, and 3 private foundations to create a comprehensive K-9 assisted therapy program. They now had 5 retired police dogs participating, paired with trauma survivors ranging from children who'd witnessed violence to veterans struggling with PTSD. The waiting list had over 200 names. And it all started because one little girl pointed at a dog and spoke 2 words. The ceremony was held at Boston Police Headquarters in the Memorial Garden, where Officer David Rodriguez's name was engraved in granite alongside 47 other fallen officers. Over 300 people packed the space: police officers in dress uniforms, city officials, reporters, families who'd benefited from the program, and supporters who'd followed Emma's journey online. Officer Morrison stood near the podium in his dress blues, Thor sitting perfectly at attention beside him. The German Shepherd wore a special ceremonial collar for the occasion, his coat brushed to gleaming perfection. But Morrison's attention was focused on the parking lot entrance, watching for a specific vehicle. Right on schedule, a rental car pulled up. Officer Marcus Chen stepped out, looking slightly rumpled from his cross-country flight. He moved to the passenger side and opened the door. Duke emerged slowly, his gray muzzle and stiff gait showing his 9 years, but his eyes were bright and alert. Chen had fitted him with a support harness to help with his arthritis, but the old K-9 still moved with dignity. Morrison jogged over. "Marcus, you made it." "Wouldn't miss this for anything," Chen said, clasping Morrison's hand. "Where's Emma?" "Inside with her mother. We wanted to surprise her." "Duke's been restless the whole flight. I think he knows something special is happening." They led Duke around the side of the building, keeping him out of sight. Morrison texted Maria, "We have a surprise for Emma. Bring her to the side entrance." 2 minutes later, Maria appeared with Emma, who was clutching her speech notes, clearly anxious about the ceremony. "Emma," Morrison said gently, "there's someone here who traveled 3,000 miles to see you." Emma's eyes widened. "What do you mean?" Duke rounded the corner. Time stopped. Emma's notes fluttered to the ground. Her hands flew to her mouth. "Duke." The old German Shepherd's ears shot forward. His tail began wagging, slowly at first, then with increasing enthusiasm. He pulled toward Emma, and Chen released the leash. Duke crossed the distance in a limping trot, and Emma dropped to her knees, arms wide. They collided in a tangle of girl and dog, Emma sobbing and laughing simultaneously, Duke whining and licking her face, his tail wagging so hard his entire back end swayed. "Duke, Duke, Duke," Emma chanted, burying her face in his fur. "You're here, you're really here." Duke pressed against her, making those soft, comforting sounds in his chest that dogs make when they're reuniting with someone they love. His paw came up, that same gesture he'd done on the video call, and Emma took it, holding it like her father must have done 1,000 times. "Partners forever," Emma whispered, her voice breaking. "Partners forever, Duke." Maria was crying. Chen was crying. Morrison had to turn away, overwhelmed. Thor approached slowly, respectful of the moment. Duke looked up at the younger German Shepherd, and some unspoken communication passed between them. Thor sat beside Emma, and she wrapped her other arm around him, holding both dogs close. "Thank you," she said, looking up at Morrison and Chen. "Thank you for bringing him." 20 minutes later, Emma stood at the podium, flanked by both Thor and Duke. The crowd had grown silent, waiting. Emma looked down at her speech notes, then folded them and put them in her pocket. "My name is Emma Rodriguez," she began, her voice clear and strong. "I'm 8 years old. 3 years ago I stopped talking. The grief of losing my father was so big, so heavy that it swallowed all my words. I became silent." She paused, looking at the dogs beside her. "But 6 months ago I saw a police dog that looked like my daddy's partner, and something inside me broke open. 2 words came out, like daddy, just 2 words, but those 2 words changed everything." Emma's hand found Thor's head, her fingers burying in his fur, a gesture that had become her anchor. People ask me all the time what it was about Thor that made me speak. Was it magic? Was it a miracle? She smiled. Maybe, but I think it was simpler than that. I think Thor reminded me that love doesn't end. My daddy's gone, but his partner Duke is still here. Duke is loved and safe and happy. And that means a part of my daddy is still here too, still making the world better, still protecting people. She looked directly at the families in the audience, the ones enrolled in the new program, the ones still waiting. If you can't find your words right now, that's okay. They're still inside you, waiting. And maybe a dog like Thor or Duke can help you find them again. Maybe these dogs who spend their lives protecting us and serving us can help us heal too. Emma's voice strengthened. The Officer Rodriguez K9 Therapy Initiative isn't just about dogs helping people. It's about honoring the officers who give everything to keep us safe. It's about making sure their legacy continues, that their service continues, even after they're gone. She touched her father's badge. Daddy, I found my voice, and now we're going to help other people find theirs, partners forever. The crowd erupted in applause. Duke barked, a strong, clear sound that echoed across the memorial garden. Thor joined in, both dogs celebrating this moment of triumph. Emma knelt between them, one hand on each dog, smiling through her tears. She'd entered that community fair 6 months ago as a silent, broken child. She stood here now as a symbol of hope, resilience, and the extraordinary healing power of the bond between humans and the animals who serve beside them. 2 words had changed everything. And those 2 words would continue changing lives for years to come. The end.